You're listening to the Influential Conversations podcast with the property management coach and industry influence of the year, Kirk, Stafford, and guests. This series is proudly brought to you by Tappy, an Australian-first platform delivering the total property care solution to help property managers provide a world-class maintenance experience to their landlords and tenants and to save them processing time on this maintenance. In Inspection Express, the market leader in property inspection reporting and a digital signature platform to provide all your property documentation in one place, giving you a seamless approach to the way you manage properties. And Agent Dynamics, the Australian market-leading team development ecosystem to help you nurture, grow and retain your property teams since 2014. Now, here's your host, Kirk Stafford. Hello and welcome to another episode in the second series of Influential Conversations. My name's Kirk Stafford, and joining me today is the amazing Amy Blackburn. Amy, you and I have known each other a while. You're the performance manager for the McGrath Network.
Yes.
Thank you for coming on board.
Thank you.
And welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you very much.
It's a thrill to have you on board. Yeah, it's a real thrill. Tell us, who's Amy Blackburn?
Very good question. I quite often think of myself as this little old girl from the mountains who never really moved quite far. But I've spent most of my career in property management, but I have dabbled in all facets of real estate, but always found myself driven back to property management.
Yeah. It's something. Real estate's a fascinating field. I remember being told years ago, when even before I started, I foolishly thought I could start this the easy way and go to RMIT and start my valuations modules for the license. I thought that'd be a great spot to go, and I was told then, it didn't go well. But I was told then that real estate itself is hard to move away from. Once it gets into your bloodstream, it's there for life, regardless. And I think Absolutely. PM is probably even more so. So, how did you end up in property management? What drew you to it?
Funny story. I am the daughter of a real estate agent, and growing up, I said I will never do real estate. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew what I didn't want to do. And lo and behold, here I am. So there you go. Like everyone, not so much fell into it, but straight out of school, had to get a job, jumped into a reception role, which was 5 minutes from home. I'm up in the Dandenong. So to work close to home was a phenomenal opportunity. And yeah, I've just gone from there, like everyone who sort of starts in those entry roles as a receptionist and just found her way.
Yeah. So where did you go from? How long were you in the role around the corner from home?
Yeah, so I started with a franchise network in one of their offices, and I stayed there for 7 years. I moved from receptionist to property management to office manager, really learnt what I could there, then moved to moved to a real estate office, a very large independent one, and then did a short stint in sales.
Different skill set, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then came back left the dark side and moved back into property management, working for a franchise head office. And came on with McGrath about 9 months ago now. Yeah,
you and I were talking about this last week. We can't believe that it was the beginning of the year. No, it was late last year, wasn't it, that you started at McGrath?
It was.
It's just the times has just gone past in the flick of an eye.
It really has, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey so far with McGrath. Really enjoying my time, and it's really nice to see a network that's really focused on property management and having key resources for their property management teams.
That's vital. We know that one of the challenges of the majority of property managers is a lack of resources and a lack of support. And that support is not just from within the office, it's also from outside, because a lot of clients look at us as being almost superfluous and not well educated or well versed in things like customer service and the legislation. But if you're in an environment where you've got that support around you, I've always found it really easy to be able to promote your services well and actually speak to your value.
100%. There needs to be value alignment, and that's something that, you know, I've really looked at later on in my career. You know, in my younger years, it probably wasn't even a thing, and I don't think values was a buzzword back in, 2021 when I started. No jokes.
It wasn't that long. Hey, listen, I got to tell you, I've been around just a little bit longer than you, and you haven't been here that long. So it's okay. It truly is.
But I think that's become it's become a thing for people when they're looking for their next move or their next employer. It's around value alignment, because you want to work cohesively with the people that you're around, and you need to get along and understand that we're all working for the same thing, and that, you know, the place that we want to get to, we're going to get there together in the same fashion with the same values, and really work towards a common goal.
That's right. And if you're and you're right about it, it's only really, I reckon it's probably not more than about 6 or 7 years that people have actually started to talk about values and having your own personal values align with the company that you go to. It was a case before of, oh, well, it's another job, you know, and I like the people around it, or they're offering me more money, or whatever it was. There was no thought of, well, hang on for a minute, let's just have a look at what they stand for and what I stand for, and seeing if there's a match.
Yeah, and do they care about me? Do they care about me, Amy Blackburn, as an individual, or do they just care about Amy Blackburn, the property manager, or Amy Blackburn, the performance manager? I'm a person. I have wants, I have dreams, I have aspirations, and is that employer going to be the person that takes me there?
Yep, that's right, exactly. And you're right, because that's when I'm talking about values, that's what I'm talking about, sort of making sure there's a holistic alignment or a holistic match, as well as there is a professional one. Because we're in an industry where, I mean, I'm even seeing people that, you know, you'd never expect to hit the wall do so. You know, I had a message a couple of weeks ago saying, 25 years, I'm done, I'm cooked, I'm out. I never thought I'd get to this stage, but I am just done. I'm burnt out. I'm going to find something else to do.
And that genuinely breaks my heart to hear those stories. And you and I had this conversation the other week, and, you know, it's, as leaders in the industry, we really have to change the narrative around what property management means and where we take property management next, and the welfare and well-being of people. Yep.
And that's paramount. That welfare part of what we do is absolutely paramount in terms of being able to retain staff, attract staff, and just care for the individuals around us. Because when we start to care for those people that are around us, well, they start to show more care for the people that are around them. And that's the client. That's what the principal's looking for. They're looking for their clients to be nurtured, but they miss the bit in the middle sometimes, which is nurture your team, give them some support, give them some care. And that's, you know, not just being woo-woo and saying, well, go off and have a massage or anything along those lines. But it's about, you know, giving them the right environment to work within, equipping them with the right resources, giving them the right people that are around them so that they can actually perform a lot better. And you and I both know that when you're working in a team that's really, really cohesive, it works so much better overall than having, you know, a couple of people in there that maybe clash, or even just one person in there, because you do sometimes get that one person in the office that can be the one that is the chaos maker.
Absolutely. And you can't, you know, there's that old adage, you can't fill from an empty cup. So what are you doing as a leader to fill people's cup?
Yep.
You have to give to get. And I think that property management has really become the crux around that in the real estate industry. I mean, you know, sales guys, love them or hate them. I'm married to one, so I must love them.
I was one, so I'm okay.
But they have the direct ability to influence their income. So it's kind of in their interest to keep performing. Whereas property managers, it's just a different role, and you constantly have to give to your clients, whether they be rental providers or renters or landlords or tenants, to appease everyone in my terminology. But what are you doing as a leader to give them those tools to be able to keep giving?
Yep, that's right. And you're right. And this is where I think we've got this disconnect between the expectations of a salesperson, the expectations on a property manager, because the property manager's income is static. The property management department's income is largely, well, I won't say static, but it's certainly, reliant on the management fees that are being derived.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the salesperson's income and the sales division's income is far more based on effort and input. Look, if you're and this is something that came up with an old boss of mine. Your success as a salesperson will be, sort of dependent on your listing volume, because the more listings you bring in, the more people contact you have, and then the whole thing just snowballs through, and you will, over a period of time, sell X percent of listings each month that you generated from the month before, and you can actually plot your income, and when you hit a flat spot, because your income will start to dip away because your overall productivity does. From a property management point of view, it's different. Salespeople don't mind working long hours if they can see the result. The salesperson will go out at 7 o'clock at night, or will be on the phone at 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night, because their income's dependent on it. PMs aren't. Their income is fixed, and the fee is fixed.
Absolutely. And, I think we're getting better at showing value to our clients, which traditionally we've been very, let's keep the clients away from what we're doing. And the result of that was, well, everything's going great, I'm going to manage it myself. So for doing a good job, you were rewarded by losing a property. There was just this disconnect. But I think because we're just driven and designed just to get the job done and do a really good job, and as I said, protect people from what we were doing so that they didn't feel it, we kind of lost our value to an extent.
Yep, that's right.
And we couldn't demonstrate our value. But as I said, we've learned from that, and technology has certainly helped in that respect by showing people the invisible value that property managers add.
And I think also, when you said it a minute ago, look, everything's going well with the management, why do I need a property manager? Basically, is the thought, because they don't see what's going on behind the scenes. I think we've entered into a period over the last couple of years where we've got, particularly in Melbourne or in Victoria, we've got greater compliance requirements on us now. So we've actually been driving a lot of those conversations with owners, and they start to say, this is too complex for me. I'm not going to even bother about thinking about this. So I'll just let you deal with it. Or you've got the others who will push back against it and say, well, I don't want to, and you've got to have a different conversation with them. We now have the opportunity that we've started those conversations to continue them, but to continue them in a positive way, and actually, as you said, show the things we do behind the scenes. Some of the best engagements I've seen from PMs have been, this is what we do when you think we're not working. This is the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. These are the day in the life of stories that a lot of PMs previously hadn't got across, and all our conversations with owners had been about, and I remember an old landlord of mine picking up the phone to me one day and saying, hello, Kirk, how much is this call going to cost me? It was always that. It was never, hey, listen, everything's going well. I just wanted to touch base with you to tell you that this is what's happened within the legislation or within the local area. So you're continuing a conversation with them rather than just being reactive all the time.
Or even that, a renter has contacted you about maintenance, but you troubleshooted that situation with them, and which prevented a call out. So you actually saved the owner money. But I think traditionally would have just gone, okay, tick on to the next thing. Whereas now we're stopping and going, okay, no, I'm actually going to communicate this. And that's, as I said, the invisible value of property managers.
Yep, that's right, exactly. And I think we do, and we don't even think about that at the time.
No.
Saying, well, look, every time I turn the toaster on, I short the lights out. So, well, it's actually not an electrical problem; it's a utility, it's an appliance problem.
Yeah.
We don't then go back the other way and go to the owner and go, well, hey, listen, Amy, just had a phone call from Kirk in your property. this is the conversation. This is what we've done. Problem solved.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me, I mean, we've all had a pretty challenging 3 years. Let's face it, I mean, well, it's actually now, it's more 3 years and, 12th of July today. It's 3 years and 4 months.
Yes.
Since this whole thing really hit hard home. How have you got through those tough spots? Where have you got your inspiration from over the last 3 years? Because I'm not presupposing anything, but I'm just saying that everybody I know has hit the wall at times. And don't tell me about the pub on your back fence. I already know about that.
Well, it's funny because I'm not actually a big drinker, so I can't even say I turn to alcohol.
Yeah.
So I'm probably the exception rather than the rule there. But there certainly have been dark moments in the last 3 years, whether you're talking about COVID or whether you're talking about the legislation changes or whether you're just talking life in general. What's really gotten me through is my people.
Yeah.
Whether they're in the industry or outside of the industry, knowing that I had my people in my corner and just letting them know whether it was a vent or whether I actually needed help. I think that was really important to communicate, and just taking a moment and stopping, noticing whether I'm escalating internally, because I tend to bottle things up and start working myself up and fizzing to the point of being a soft drink exploding. But you just have to take a moment out and take a breath, as opposed to just keeping on moving. Something that I've learned in the last 12 months, I've really, really reflected on, is boundaries. You know, you can't actually call me before 8 o'clock in the morning now unless I choose to let you.
Yep.
Because if it's before 8 o'clock, the world's not going to end. There's probably not much that I can do. If I'm on the road prior to that, no problem. But outside of that, you know, I've really set boundaries as to when you can and can't contact me, you know, making allowances for family and things like that. But I really, really sucked at boundaries prior. Terrible. And I was always I'll do it, just leave it with me. I'll do it. And Charlotte Pascoe taught me that I can't do everything all the time. So it's taken me a long time to get to that point, but I've got there. And it's been a lot of self-reflection. And I think as property managers, we're problem solvers. We like to fix it. We like to be everything to everyone. But back to what we said before, you can't fill from an empty cup.
That's right.
And I found that, I was just going to say, I found myself scraping the bottom of that cup and getting every very last drop out till it was bone dry. So boundaries has been a really, really important thing for me.
Yeah. And the thing is also, and no property manager I know is any different. Yes, they're problem solvers, but I would say that the overwhelming majority, you know, including myself, I went through this as well, we're people pleasers. We're in the industry because we want to give. We're certainly not in it for the big bucks, but we're in it because we like being at the forefront of solving problems and helping people. That can become corrosive if we don't, as you've done, put boundaries in place and say, well, no, look, I'm available between X time and Y time, and outside of that, well, I'm sorry, but no problems that insurmountable that it can't wait.
Correct. And even if it is, there are other people out there who can help you. You know, even if the property's on burning down, well, I'm sorry, I don't have a fire hose. I can't get out there and put it out myself. Your property manager shouldn't be your first port of call in those instances. Yes, they should be one of the first calls, don't get me wrong. But we need to help people help themselves.
Yep, that's right.
We aren't the solution. We are the solution finders. And we need to educate people on how to find those solutions.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think we tend to have been looked at as the solution because for quite some time we've held all that knowledge, we've held that power. But that's changed, particularly what I see now talking to a lot of property managers is that they're dealing with a client cohort that is far more educated and perhaps far more willing to be educated rather than keep going to the PM and going, well, we need you to solve this, when in a lot of cases it's actually got nothing to do with managing the property. And managing the property is probably an incorrect way of saying it, isn't it? I mean, we were talking about this before as well. It's the relationship that we manage, not because the property's static. The property doesn't have problems, or occasionally it'll need a bit of maintenance. But it's the people that we manage, the relationships, and they're the important things.
Yeah, and that's the fundamental of, in my role now, is it in the interest of my people in my offices? Does this actually provide them a solution? And that's where I need to look at my focus, whether we're looking at tech or whether we're looking at anything. Yes, okay, it might help the job, but doesn't actually help the people.
Yep. Again, we go back to what we were talking about before. If we care for the people, from the top down, if we take that approach, we'll care for the people. And I think it was Branson that said that if you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customer. That's the truth of it. You take care of the people around you. You give them, again, we'll go back, you give them the right environment to work in, and that's very broad. You'll end up with a much more high-performing team and a much better team than what you currently have.
Yeah. And that's another thing that we've learned on the back of the last few years is that my environment isn't your environment. What works for me isn't necessarily what works for you. And I'm not suggesting that people go out and cater for all differences to the detriment of the business. That's not what I'm talking about. But you need to understand your people better than ever before. You need to understand what drives them, and you need to understand what might be a trigger for them in terms of performance and things like that. What motivates me doesn't motivate you.
Yep, that's right.
Some people are money motivated, some people aren't. Some people just want to feel good coming into their office, and what does that look like? Understanding your people is so crucial these days. There's not managers anymore, there's leaders.
Yep. And it's important to make a differentiation between the two of them, because the old style of manager, so to speak, as a title, you go even 10 years ago, is vastly different. And, we now look for people for leadership, not management. When did you start to see that first change?
It was probably in response to COVID. I would suggest that it became the forefront due to a number of reasons. Wellbeing is sort of a focus of mine, and it's important that we understand the wellbeing of our people. But I think it was coming, but COVID just supercharged it, because people were really insular in their world, and everything became quite sensitive. Things that we were reacting to that we didn't react to before, or our tolerance levels were so depleted that any kind of friction or difference really became highlighted. And I think that's kind of what's driven that narrative.
Yeah. I got to say, I noticed at the same time when we went into that first national lockdown, we had a void. And I'm not just talking about from an industry point of view, I'm talking about from a societal point of view. That everyone was looking for leadership, and it wasn't there because they were too busy trying to formulate responses. And look, I think the people at the very top of the government changed in whether you're talking about the Prime Minister, whether you're talking about the Premier, I'm not talking about the politics of it, but at least they were stepping up and getting in front of you almost on a daily basis, and in some cases more than daily, to try to give you some idea of what was going on. And I think that was a good show of leadership. Not everything met with everybody's approval. Not everything's going to. But there was what they were trying to do was manage the response, but lead the people.
Correct.
And there's a really
100%.
Good lesson, I think, that we can draw from that. How are you finding the leadership within your organisation has evolved? And I know you've only been there 9 months, so you've probably got some benchmarking to draw back on. How are you finding your leadership experience within the networks been?
As I said, we've acknowledged that there's a need to pivot what leadership looks like, and that we need to be more adaptable. And it's about managing, well, there's that word, but managing expectations, though. It's not so much around, managing KPIs and all this kind of stuff. It's, okay, where do we need to be flexible? Where do we need to have a little bit more tolerance, that kind of thing? And giving people a path, that's absolutely vital. Where is this position working with this company going to lead me to my next step?
Yep.
Property management is now a career. It's not a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking just property manager, the title. We were talking before, and when I first started, property manager was the only title in this field.
Yep, that's right.
But now there's so much more to it. I never thought that my job existed.
Yeah, well, I don't think any of us really did. I mean, I started a little bit before you, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And property management was all there was. There was no, and I remember talking to Lee Woodward on one of his very, very early recordings about this new concept of a thing called a business development manager, and how we just ordered into Wilson Pride Property Management, which is where I had a business ownership. And since then we've gone on. We've got leasing inspection, leasing managers or leasing associates. We're now even moving away from. I think some of the firms are moving away from the term property manager as a title, because it's really a bit of a misnomer, as we were talking before. We're not managing a static object.
No.
So what are you saying we do?
Correct. We can't control the property.
No.
We can't control when the hot water service is going to go. We can't control when the roof is going to need repairs or replacement or anything like that. All we can do is educate our clients as to when these things might occur and help navigate them through timeframes around things like that. We're educators.
Yep. I was about to use exactly that same word, but it's also, and you mentioned it a minute ago, it's about setting and managing those expectations. So if we actually say to a client, well, these are the things that we need to watch for during the course of your ownership of the property. If they're a first-time investor, you're going to have repairs, you're going to have insurances, you're going to have maintenance, you're going to have your rates and your mortgage to pay. Yeah, sure, but also be aware that there are other variables in there. Rather than expecting us to be, the ones that run it all for you, just be aware that these are the things that may come up. And that way we'll actually start to create a better environment for ourselves. Going, I remember you telling me that this might happen.
And don't assume that people know. Don't assume that people understand it. Don't assume that they know that the rent can only be increased every 12 months unless your lease was started, blah, 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 blah.
June
you have to be careful.
Sorry.
Yes. But that was something that we only learnt recently. That wasn't clearly articulated when the legislation changed. And that's the other thing that we need to make sure that we're educating people on, is that we don't have all the answers all the time. But what we will do is we will help navigate you to a resolution.
That's right. Yep. And the other thing is, don't be ashamed or afraid or embarrassed when you don't know the answer. No. But don't ever say, oh, look, I don't know, and leave it at that. No. Always turn around and say, well, let me do some research on that and I'll come back to you.
Correct. It's a learning opportunity for yourself.
Yeah. It's a small part of your professional development.
We're always learning. I mean, I'm sure you're the same. I learn something new every day.
Yep.
Every single day of doing this job.
Couldn't agree more. Yep. And that's just it. The thing is, you've just got to be open to it and realise that you don't know it all. No,
you don't. But also too, it's changed, as we've talked about. What property management was back in 2000 is not what it is today. Hence why, as you said, people are looking at, are we property managers or are we something else? And utilising the skill sets of different people.
Yeah, but I don't think you need to go back to 2000 to say it's changed. I think you can just go back to 2020, 2019, 2020, because our entire society has altered significantly in that amount of time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sure has.
Amy, it's been a delight. We're getting to the point where we're running over time. I like to try to keep these to about 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. We're over that, which is
Sure.
great. I'm always happy for it to go over, but I'm also mindful that I don't want to lose the audience along the way when they go, you get faced with a long article. It's TLDR, too long, didn't read. So I am extremely grateful to you for coming on. I'm looking forward. Are you coming to any of the conferences or the events in the next couple of weeks or so?
Sure am. I try and get out to as much as I can.
Terrific. Well, I look forward to seeing you then. Amy Blackburn from McGrath, again, thank you. I look forward to seeing you soon. And to anybody else listening, I look forward to catching up with you as well.
Thank you.
You've been listening to another podcast in the Influential Conversations series. This series is proudly brought to you by Tappy, helping property managers deliver a world-class maintenance experience to their landlords and tenants and providing a total property care solution. Inspection Express, the market leader in property inspection reporting and digital signature property documentation, giving you a seamless approach to the way that you manage properties. And Agent Dynamics, the Australian market-leading team development ecosystem to help you nurture, grow and retain your property teams since 2014. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next time for the next in this series.